you found yourself in a situation when you're out of job because you are telling the truth, and you're always in a constant opposition to the Kremlin, and so there is less and less job for you available as a journalist, and your friends, they are gradually moved to the dark side, and they're getting closer and closer to the Kremlin.
Now, Andrei Soldatov and Irina Borogan are two of Russia's most respected investigative journalists, making their name in 2010 with The New Nobility, which laid bare the corrupt world of the FSB, the heir to the KGB. Now their powerful memoir, Our Dear Friends in Moscow, tells their story, starting in the liberal heyday of Russian journalism in the 1990s and chronicling how far their former colleagues have become cheerleaders for Putin. They give a revealing first-hand account of how the erosion of media freedom mirrored Russia's descent into autocracy to the point that they had to flee to London. And I'm pleased to say that Andrei and Irina are both with me in the studio right now. Welcome to Times Radio. Good to have you both here.
Hi, thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
A pleasure. Look, the book begins in the first years of Vladimir Putin's presidency. You were both working at the newspaper Segondia, once the most popular newspaper in Russia. Take me back to what it was like then. Was it an exciting time? Was there a sense of new freedoms?
To be honest, it was. Putin came to power, but it was a bad event, a bad sign for everybody, for people like us. But at the same time, the time back then was absolutely free. There was a lot of freedom for journalists still. And we were young, like Andrei was 24, I was 25, so we were full of energy and optimism about the Russian future. So we could work as journalists, we were free. So there were no, back then, it was not the time when Putin installed the censorship immediately.
Was it a dangerous time to be a journalist in Russia?
Yes, we already had several journalists killed, but what we were quite certain about that at the time it was impossible to send a journalist to prison. That came 2 years later. Already by 2002, it became clear that Putin was introducing a really harsh censorship, especially on people like us, people who write about sensitive things like the Russian security services.
Well, so in 2000, you both then joined the staff of a Soviet-era newspaper with sources in the Kremlin called Izvestia, and quickly became friends with co-workers there, including the descendant of an elite Soviet family and a reporter in Putin's press pool and so on. Tell me about those friendships. Was there a sense of divide in that newspaper between people who quite liked the direction the Kremlin was going and people who didn't, or was it all very close?
That's not like there was a huge divide between us. We were not the same. We believed in different things, but anyway, we could talk to each other. We made friendships, and we spent a lot of time together discussing things. That's Russia, so that was a lot of drinking and a lot of harsh discussion on everything about Russia's future, about Russia's past, about sympathies for Soviet Union, everything. So it was not like we were enemy to each other. We were friends.
Yeah, both happening at the same time, the drinking and the discussing.
Yes.
I've been to Russia. I know how it works. Look, when did you start to feel the influence of the state at that newspaper? Was it obvious from the start?
To be honest, it became obvious already by the autumn of 2000 when we had this really big tragedy when a big Russian nuclear submarine sunk, and immediately we understood that it was really difficult to write about these things. And also one of the friends, she was accompanying Putin to Sochi, to his resort he beloved, and she told us very, very honestly that she advised him on how to talk to the media, which was a very surprising thing to us. And also she told us that the reason why Putin was silent for several days when everybody in the country was so anxious about the fate of his sailors, that he was going through some surgery, some transplantation of his hair.
Wow, okay. And I mean, look, you eventually resigned from this newspaper, and you chronicle in the book how over time your friendships with the people you work with kind of dissolve. Was that a painful process, or were you glad to be rid of them? I mean, how does that feel when you've been colleagues with people and you become so distant from them?
It was very, very hard because, I mean, when you are young and you think, and they were our real friends, and at some moment you found yourself in a situation when you're out of job because you are telling the truth, and you're always in a constant opposition to the Kremlin, and so there is less and less job for you available as a journalist, and your friends, they are gradually moved to the dark side, and they're getting closer and closer to the Kremlin, and eventually they all started being like the Kremlin propagandists, and even some of them put some stuff personally against us on their social media, and that was really, really painful, because you feel you're like still feeling a lot, and you love these people, but you can't anymore.
What do they think of you at this time? Do they think of you with guilt, or do they think of you with contempt because you're not backing the Kremlin regime? What's their approach to you? Do they think you're traitors?
I would say that they believed that at some moment Russian media and Russian society was dominated by liberals. They were extremely happy that Putin got rid of those liberals. They believed we were part of this group of people who lost. And also they believed that we were still sort of enemies of the state, and one of our friends, he actually reposted a big list of enemies of the state somebody compiled on social media, and our names were on this list, which was, to be honest, felt very personal.
And have you spoken to him about that? Because I know with his book you've been back in touch with a lot of these people. Have you addressed that directly?
Yes, Irina spoke to this guy.
I spoke to this guy, and to be honest, his name is Peter. He was my favorite friend among this group of people, and we were very, very close. And when he published all this stuff on his social media, I was so depressed, and after that, when I needed to get back to him, and I called him, and I listened to his voice like 2 years ago on the phone, and explained and why I'm talking to him, and I listened to his voice. It was very, very painful, because I felt that I'm still love him, and I know my relatives. My father, he is from Ukraine, and my relatives, all his family, they live in Odessa, or in Odessa region, and I have my aunt who spent nights out because she's afraid of being buried under rubbles. And when I started talking to him, I understand I still love him, but at the same moment I remember about my auntie under bombardments, and at the last interview, in my last interview, I asked him, Peter, however, my relatives are under bombardment, and you wrote an article about the final solution of the Ukrainian question. What do you think? What's going on? And he told me, Irina, I'm very, very sorry about your family. That's a real tragedy, what's going on. But we're not going to stop. We will go further. And that was just complete blow. I was speechless, and I couldn't speak for several hours after that.
Well, look, so you're both in London now. You're deemed enemies of the Russian state for the work that you continue to do. When you speak to these old friends, I'm interested in your interpretation of what's going on for them, particularly with the war at the moment. The fact that the Russian press portrays it in such a different way to all the press outside Russia. Do they know they're lying but think it's the right thing to do? Do they not know they're lying? Are they subject to the propaganda as well as creating it? What do you think?
They believe that they are playing a really huge role in Russian history, and all of them were trained as historians, and all of them are extremely ambitious. So for them to say something, even if it's not true, is important, because they think they have this role in Russian politics and in Russian history. So basically they don't care. I asked one of these guys why he willingly participated in a FSB, Russian Security Service, disinformation campaign, and he said, well, because it was needed to be done.
But they must, I mean, these are intelligent people. They must see the media of the rest of the world. They must know that for the rest of the world, particularly journalists in the rest of the world, this is contemptible what they're doing.
Yes, but they had such a huge grudge against the West, and because it's so personal to many of them, as you mentioned, most of them came from very prominent Soviet families. So the collapse of the Soviet Union, they felt very personally. The country they loved was broken, and they lost their social status, and now only Putin could give that to them back. So they feel very loyal to him.
Were any of them, Irina, were they reluctant to speak to you when you were writing this book? Do they want to avoid you? Do they want to pretend you don't exist?
Not all of them. 2 of these people agreed to talk to us, but some of them did not. One of them, it is a female who is Minister of Culture of Russia now. She responded in a very official way, pretended to be that her personal phone is her press secretary.
Right.
So she, for obvious reasons. And another guy who is in charge for the Kremlin's soft power operations in Belgrade. He's the chief of Ruski Dom, which is a Russian house, which is part of soft power, Kremlin soft power operations. He responded to me, but he said that he's not gonna talk to the foreign agents. So, but he confirmed that we used to be friends.
Yeah, fascinating. Well, why was now the time to tell this story? Why was now the time to sort of expose how this divide looks when you're right in the middle of it?
When the war started, it was such a big shock for us, to be honest, even given the fact how many things we already knew about Russian society. Nevertheless, the support the best and brightest of Russian society provided to Putin came as a shock. So we tried to understand what drives these people and why they wanted to side with Putin. And again, these are intelligent and smart people. So the reasons behind that was something we tried to explore and to understand.
Do you think, either of you, that you'll ever be able to go back to Russia, be able to work in Russia again?
I'm on the wanted list of the Russian authorities, and if I ever get back, it's up to 10 years in prison, and Irina is in my criminal accomplice, according to the Russian law.
Eventually we definitely get back.
Yeah, we hope so.
There is no doubt.
Look, I hope so. I hope so. How safe do you feel in London?
Well, we live under police protection, but it's relatively, we think it's much safer than, say, on the continent.
Right. Well, I mean, look, I hope so. Thanks so much indeed for coming in to tell us your story.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much, Hugo.
A real pleasure. That is Andrei Soldatov and Irina Borogan, and the book is Our Dear Friends in Moscow, The Inside Story of a Broken Generation, and it is out on Thursday.